So we're going to talk about personal data and privacy in Southeast Asia in this session. So my name is Ploy, and I'm the founder of an organization that works on digital rights in the region of Southeast Asia. So privacy and personal data protection is part of our work, and hope that you enjoy the presentation today. So we're going to start with the landscape of personal data protection law in this region first. Just a brief to let you understand of what it's like here in this region, just giving you a bit of the background. So the adoption of the GDPR, the General Data Protection Law, make those countries in Southeast Asia that already have a law on personal data protection in place to review the law, as well as influences those that never have such law in place to implement one. So the GDPR was adopted in 2018, and it alerts nations in Southeast Asia to pay more attention to personal data protection. This is because the GDPR goes beyond the EU border and protect EU citizens outside of the EU, which affect business opportunity. We have Malaysia, Philippines, and Singapore as a nation that already have the personal data protection law in place. The personal data law in Thailand passed last year in 2019 and expect to come into effect soon, while Indonesia one is also proposing and is under review in the parliament right now. So the next slide, we look at why it's important for us to have a robust personal data law, and also the one that protect our privacy. So with the robust personal data protection law, it can protect citizens from their data being exploited from incidents such as cybercrime, negligence in taking care of personal data, abuse of personal data, and privacy and surveillance. After the adoption of the GDPR, because the law is so strict, and they also have strong enforcement mechanism in place, such as the European Data Protection Supervisor and the EU Court of Justice. It alerts business worldwide to review and change how they collect data of users and their clients, this including the big tech company. Without data protection law, it opens opportunity for personal data to be exploited, as there's no regulation to require stakeholders on how personal data must be treated. Unfortunately, none of the countries in Southeast Asia have the personal data protection law and mechanism that meet the level of what the EU has. There is also a shared character among the existing law in the region. This is found in the law in Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand that doesn't include the government agency as part of the law, given the risk of the government agency power in terms of data governance and surveillance. Well, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, they have a guideline called the OECD Guideline on the Protection of Privacy, and Transporter Data Flow of Personal Data, in which all the 10 countries in ASEAN member states are member. It states that exclusion of state due to reason of national security and public policy from data protection should be as few as possible and made known to the public. Changing the law in order to fix this matter is challenging. Sometimes it is a series of laws that support one another, and reforming it would require changing a number of registration altogether. When a robust personal data and privacy protection law and mechanism do not exist in the region, they make countries in Southeast Asia being easily exploited by foreign non-state actors as well. And I'm going to give the example of the incident of the Cambridge Analytica in here. So the incident of the Cambridge Analytica didn't happen just only in the US when exposed as a scandal, but it also happened here in Southeast Asia as well. In 2016, where Philippines had the election resulted in the victory of Rodrigo Duterte, it was documented that the company had a role in helping Duterte to win. Because of the weaker regulation, the country became like a playground for the company to test their strategy, and they can get away with it easier. Leaked document from the company former staff also show that the former Prime Minister Najib Razak might have won the election in 2018 if the scandal had not been exposed first. And also, when the robust personal data law is not in place, big tech can still harvest data and exploit data according to their own policy. What happened recently is the case of Twitter. The company recently removed its privacy setting that allow user not to share data with advisor. Well, those in the European Union, European Free Trade Association, and the UK, they can still actually choose to remain private because they are protected by the GDPR. But it is not an option for the rest of the world. So moving to the next slide, many countries in Southeast Asia are also planning to have 5G in their country, or already have that new generation of wireless technology in the country. This new generation of wireless technology will contribute a significant impact to the development, particularly the Smart City initiative. It is the next generation of mobile internet connectivity which offers faster speed and more reliable connections on devices. So 5G will enable the work of the Internet of Things, or we call it the IoT, in which devices, machines, and those with digital identification, including individuals, are connected. In this case, it might be easier to understand the meaning of IoT if it described as the Internet connected things. IoT is actually not something that is completely new and completely like in the future. It has already been in use, like your smart TV at home, something like that. However, 5G will bring IoT to the new level. The risk of it happens when many devices are connected to the same network and share data between each other without intervention of the user. So the adoption of the digital ID, as many countries in the region has planned, will be part of the initiative as well. Digital ID in this case is a digital identity. It is an identification information in the digital form, and it is not limited to just an ID number. It can also include other information such as social security number, your place of birth, blood group, and biometric data such as fingerprint, iris scan, your facial feature, facial photograph, And digital ID can potentially enable great risk, unfortunately, especially if a robust cybersecurity and personal data protection regulation and mechanism are not in place. So, in this case, the initiative will need a database. And usually involve like third-party contractor at some point to manage them in terms of digital ID. And this database of digital ID will usually contain mass amount of sensitive data, and this is likely to be a smart ID card that is used to access multiple services. If this digital ID will include biometric data in the future as well, such as your face, your iris scan, and fingerprint, the database of digital ID would be more sensitive. This can be actually risky in terms of surveillance, as digital ID will also enable an individual to be tracked by authority regarding their movement, since the smart ID card will likely to be used to access multiple services, like I said before, such as transportation, healthcare, and finance. So the example of it is when they have a protest in Hong Kong. So protesters in Hong Kong avoided using their octopus card to use the subway service because it is linked to their IDs. And police also use court orders to obtain details from octopus card during the protest and CCTV camera footage of the protester from one of the city's largest bus company. And the example shown here mean that it can pose, it can put individual at risk in a political repressive environment if they would like to challenge the regime by organizing or doing something, some political activity, that are against the regime, something like that. So this is the risk. So the 5G, the digital ID, the use of biometric data, as I said, all this technology will be an important element to form a smart city project, which is many countries in Southeast Asia are moving toward according to the digital economy plan. It is also not limited to just at the national level. It is also a regional plan as well. And it was announced as an ASEAN initiative in 2018, in which the ASEAN Smart City Network, or we call it the ASEAN, was introduced during the 32nd ASEAN Summit on April 28, 2019. So this ASEAN Smart City Network is announced as a collaborative platform where 26 pilot cities from all 10 ASEAN member states are moving toward urban development and digitalization. So, so this is a concern. If we don't have the robust personal data law and mechanism in place, so you can see that it can pose great risk on personal data as well as privacy of individuals. We're going to move to the next slide, in which I'm going to talk about the idea of data colonization. Actually, this is actually the ideology in which the idea of the term data colonization is when a foreign entity try to harvest data for their own benefit. Can be both private sector or public sector as well. In this case, it can be separated into two campuses, which are the China campus and the Western campus, in which Southeast Asia can be a better ground here. So I think I'm not the first one who said this, but China is known for its surveillance, tech, given what happened inside the country, such as the social credit program that is widely used. That is used for the population, for the citizen, and also the widely used of facial recognition tech as well, and also the surveillance tech targeting the ethnic minorities such as the Uyghur and the Tibetan. So the model of social control through tech with companies like Alibaba and Tencent might also inspire the authoritarian regime in Southeast Asia as well. And importing of Chinese surveillance tech by this regime is also possible, and that can be a concern if it happens. In this case, with the previous slides that we talked about the 5G and all those new technology, China actually agreed to provide tech infrastructure like 5G to many countries in Southeast Asia, such as Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. So even though there's no concrete information occur in the region yet, or like officially documented about the consequence of that, because this thing is totally new. I think in this case, this is worth to monitor about what's going to happen. And let's move to the next slide, which is we're going to talk about the Western campus. So in the Western world, it's about the big tech. So the big tech company are usually the main player here. And in this region of Southeast Asia, the concern are on social media and messaging platform. So we have the company like Facebook and Google that are known to earn a majority of their revenue from advertisement, which is actually based on personal data of people, both user and non-user as well, that they have. The data is gathered through various methods and are monetized through their business model. And Southeast Asia has a high proportion of social media and messaging platform user. Some of them consider Facebook as the internet, such as in Myanmar and the Philippines. And this actually can be tracked, and this is actually can be traced back to the business initiative of the company. The example that I'm going to give here is the internet.org, which doesn't exist anymore. So it's actually proved to bring negative impacts to the society. With people with low digital literacy in the region, it proved to lead to something that was unexpected, such as what happened in Myanmar regarding the genocide of the Rohingya and the riot in Indonesia, for example, where online disinformation fueled by racial and religious polarization lead to offline violence. So this idea really put democracy at risk. Democracy can be affected from this. If the use of tech surveillance is normalized, activists, government, critics, and marginalized people can be the most vulnerable. Some marginalized people that I'm talking here are, for example, like the LGBTQ people in the country, where they are not welcome to live openly yet, for example. These people can be at risk. Social media and messaging company with the model and algorithm actually have it has been documented that the model and algorithm it proved that it affects democracy, as the content on the platform can be used to manipulate public opinion through disinformation or harvesting of disinformation, such as in the case of Cambridge Analytica. And weak regulation and limited digital literacy of people in Southeast Asia help fuel this matter. We explained already why weak regulation matter in the previous slide. We can look at the digital literacy. We can look at the digital literacy here. So when the digital literacy of people are limited, they might not know how their privacy and data is exploited by using those platforms and technology, for example. So here in this case, a robust regional data protection and regulation is needed in the region to create the same meaning of personal data and privacy and interpretation of how it should be protected. In the past recent years, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, has adopted some milestone framework and coordinated initiative that involve personal data. And this framework and initiative aim at is mostly aimed at economic growth only, but overlook human rights aspect. The framework on, among the framework and initiative, they have the framework on personal data protection that was adopted in 2016. And the framework has an objective to strengthen the protection of personal data in ASEAN and to facilitate cooperation among the ASEAN member states. However, the framework is not legally binding and this is not practically effective. It is actually extremely challenging to have a robust regional data protection regulation and mechanism in Southeast Asia like the one in the GDPR in the European Union due to the repressive political regime that is the majority of Southeast Asian nations. So we're going to come to the conclusion here that even though the GDPR alert the country in Southeast Asian nation to review and to pay more attention on the personal data protection law in the region, but it is not. We can say that personal data and privacy is not strongly protected in the region yet, and it still has a long way to go. There's also a need to increase effort on digital literacy and privacy literacy among the Southeast Asian nations due to the rise in technology. Government agencies must also be included as part of the personal data law to protect data from exploitation and error by the agency as well. And without this element, there cannot be a robust personal data and privacy law in place. And data exploitation by non-state actors, particularly big tech, should be concerned by the government. Any use of controversial technology and initiatives such as facial recognition and digital ID should be carefully studied regarding their impact on human rights by the authority. There's also a need for a strong regional actor. There's a need to have a strong regional actor actually, and there's a need for them to invent a strong and better regional mechanism to be a part for this region to have the robust personal data protection at the regional level. At the current situation, ASEAN needs to put more effort on this despite extremely challenging political environment. And we also need more research and advocacy on the issue of data protection and privacy in Southeast Asia in order to achieve that. So I'm gonna end the presentation here, and thank you very much for your attention.